Welcome to this July 21st edition of the Paperboyz. This summer is getting away from us in a big hurry, but there's still plenty of sports going on here we need to touch base on. And I'm Courier Sports Editor Doug Newhoff, and joining me today is Assistant Sports Editor Jim Sullivan. Sully, what's on your mind this week?
Well, we've got a little bit of golf trivia to discuss, and it's a guy that's been in the headlines around the world, and especially in the state of Iowa here, Zach Johnson. Now, Zach, as many of you know, has now won 2 major championships, the Masters and yesterday the British Open in exciting fashion. The one tournament that Zach Johnson did not win in his career was the Waterloo Open. He played it in 2001 and finished 2 strokes behind George McNeil, tied for second actually with a guy named Jeff Schmid from Iowa City. So if someone asks you about Zach Johnson, just tell them, well, he's great, but didn't win the Waterloo Open.
Didn't win the big one.
Didn't win the big one.
I'm pretty sure he'll take the British Open and the Masters.
He might be happy with that trade, I would think.
You know, it's unique and kind of odd too that a guy who's played professional golf for as many years as he has only has 12 career victories, and 2 of them are majors.
Yeah, it's a pretty elite club too that he's in with people like Tiger Woods and so on. And just watching it off and on during the weekend when I wasn't covering golf locally, it was a tremendously exciting show for a golf fan. You have all these names and all these storylines, and there's a little bit of irony involved. For instance, on Saturday, the Golf Channel happened to be on where I was working, and some analyst was just ripping Jordan Spieth for playing in the John Deere Classic, and they said there's no way that a guy who plays in the John Deere Classic 1 week can win the British Open without preparing. Well, he was right. He just had the wrong guy. I mean, Zach Johnson went through the same thing and did it, and made everyone here very excited and very proud.
Yeah, it was good. I think it was good for golf too. I mean, we didn't have to hear about Tiger Woods this and Tiger Woods that. There were enough other storylines, enough things going on that whether or not he was a factor didn't seem to matter in the big picture of what happened with the British Open. Let's take that a little bit further now. Where does Zach Johnson fit in when you start to rank the best athletes to ever come out of the state of Iowa?
Well, that's an interesting discussion. I saw, a little bit of this yesterday on the internet. Certainly, you have to rank him up there somewhere near the top. We have, the guy that's been the choice for half a century in Dan Gable, but I think you can't ignore him. You have the names you've seen thrown. Kurt Warner would be another. I'm brain cut, the gymnast.
Shannon.
Well,
oh God.
One from West Des Moines.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. Right. Can't put a name to the face right now.
Okay, but people like that. There's several others. And it's an interesting discussion. Again, you'd have to put them right up there. There's Bob Feller, of course.
Bob Feller.
And going way back to the 19th century, Cap Anson. Now, Cap Anson he's a Hall of Fame baseball player, instrumental in the early days of the sport. But there were some other controversy surrounding him and his views, racial views. But still, he was a great ball player. So there's a lot of them, but certainly Zach Johnson's right there.
Niall Kinnick,
that's another one. I guess depending on how you want to define Iowans, Chuck Long would have to belong in that discussion somewhere. There's no shortage of names.
Interesting. Let's talk UNI football for just a minute. Last week they agreed to a 2-game series with Montana, which will be kind of exciting for Panther football fans, maybe not so exciting for the coaching staff that's got to prepare this team to play some of these heavyweights. So the way it looks to me now, 2016, UNI starts at Iowa State on September 3rd, then they host Montana, then they go to Eastern Washington, and then you get the good old Missouri Valley Football Conference, which, with Pelini and Jim Tressel teaming up at Youngstown, they're going to be a power. I mean, Illinois State's already there. North Dakota State's won the last several national championships. It's not getting any easier in the Missouri Valley Conference. So you're adding that on to what is arguably the toughest non-conference schedule that certainly UNI has ever played, and maybe any team in FCS has ever played. Is this good for UNI football?
Potentially, yes, to the extent that I think it's an attractive home game. Potentially, yes, in that if UNI can win, let's say 2 of those 3 games, it enhances the playoff resume. Potentially, no, if they go 0-3, and that's certainly a possibility. Montana is kind of an interesting story. Since the two teams met in 2011, they've kind of gone in different paths. Montana's gone through, I think, 3 football coaches since then. They've had some NCAA issues. Correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think they made the playoffs last year. So they're kind of in a rebuilding, retooling mode. And I'm not sure if there's ever a good time to meet them, but certainly it'll be better for you and I meeting them in Cedar Falls as opposed to Missoula, where they've had absolutely no luck against the Grizzlies. The other interesting thing about the Missouri Valley football portion of the schedule is that the good news there is that Illinois State drops off. The bad news is Youngstown State comes on. So now you have, as you suggested, Bo Pelini coming in, and you have to believe that he can have that program as a contender. It's actually been very, very close the last few years, and I think that was one of the problems they had, that they couldn't quite get to the playoffs. They were always on the brink, always on the cusp, and then they drop a game or two late in the year that really cost them. So it's going to be tough. There's no question about it, but I think that they're in an era maybe financially where Troy Denon is thinking that we have to schedule some high caliber opponents and get some people in here and then hope for the best.
I guess that begs the question. I mean, does the increase in revenue, let's say you go from 11,000 fans that might come for a lesser profile game to filling the place at 16,000 for Montana, so you get 5,000 extra tickets sold, a little extra concession revenue, but does that offset money you'd potentially lose not hosting a playoff game?
Sure. I mean, that is a problem. It's a gamble. There's no question about that, because as we just mentioned, if you don't succeed in that portion of the schedule, you really put yourself behind the 8 ball in terms of making the playoffs. You're in a situation where you have to win the conference, probably have to almost run the table in the conference to even be remotely considered expanded playoff field notwithstanding. Certainly there's a gamble there, and it's only worth it if you win.
Exactly. Yeah, that's that will be very interesting to see how that plays out. I mean, I feel for the coaching staff trying to put together game plans to deal with those 3 teams in particular. Bing, bang, bong, 3 weeks in a row, plus the physical toll that it takes on you. And, you always have a lot of nicks and bumps and bruises and so forth after the first game against Iowa State, and then you've got to go into those 2, and then you've got to regroup and go into the Missouri Valley Football Conference. So it seems the cards are kind of stacked against the Panthers.
If you remember that they're not perfectly similar, but there's some parallels between the 2016 schedule, what you and I did in 2012. Now it mixed in, I think, a D2 opponent in there, but it played Iowa and Wisconsin and Iowa, within about a 3-week span, and that was really concerned by the time you and I got to Iowa. They got some injuries, and then that game really, really took a toll on the Panthers going forward, and they finished 5-6. So there's no question that will also be a concern. I assume there'll be a bye week that'll fall in there somewhere. We don't know where yet because the Valley schedule has not been released, but they have 3 rather salty opponents within a 3-week span.
Yep, that'll be fun. On a related subject, August 1st, the NCAA's cost of attendance will be implemented. It won't apply to UNI football, won't apply to most FCS football teams, but that's going to be another developing and ongoing issue that, maybe by the time we get to 2016, 2017, that may be a factor. And I just brought that up because that's something we're going to explore beginning Sunday in the Courier, both in print and in our online content, so keep an eye out for that. We're going to talk about what that means to UNI athletics overall, and in particular what it does for the Panther football program, and where all this might be leading long term. So keep an eye out for that. And as long as we're on UNI subjects here, Dan Steele has left the Panthers track and field program to take a position as, I believe, an associate head coach at Iowa State. Yes. Do you have any insight into what's up with that?
Not beyond the relationship that Steele has with the head coach at Iowa State. They worked together at the University of Oregon, were pretty successful there, and Steele framed it as he didn't want to pass up an opportunity to work with his companion, somebody he knows very well, and someone with whom he's had success in the past. All that said, the legacy that he leaves behind is interesting. During Chris Bucknam's long 25-year tenure here, the Panthers, from a team standpoint, enjoyed tremendous success. They had, I think, they've had indoor and outdoor champions at the NCAA level individually, and the program really, really looked like it was on the way to going somewhere when he left to go to Arkansas. Now we have a situation where they've had some good individuals, no one that's won an NCAA championship, a fair amount of Missouri Valley champions. To name one, Rachel Paith, the Waverly Shellrock product, won a Valley multi-events titles. And he always seemed to produce those kind of athletes. What he did not produce was enough depth. I think you saw that in some areas, the distances, the short sprints, except for Brandon Carnes, they really didn't have what they needed to contend from a team standpoint at the Valley level. Thus, you saw them finish mostly fourth a lot in the team standings on the men's side. The women's side was just starting to show an uptick. They were moving up. They had a very, very good indoor and outdoor season, led by Alex Wilson. But again, they never were quite at that level that they reached when Bucknam was there. So going forward, the challenge for the new head coach, whoever that'll be, will be to try to get UNI back to that team championship level. And whether he'll have the resources and the ability to attract the people to do that in this day and age is another question.
Any thoughts about who might be good candidates for that position? I mean, the first one that came to my mind was Dave Paulson, and obviously I don't know whether he'd be interested or whether they would consider him qualified for that, but I like putting UNI guys in UNI coaching positions. It's worked well in the past, and it seems like a good way to go forward.
By that standard, there's no one better qualified than Dave Paulson, and it's really not even close. He's been a part of that program as a runner, as an assistant coach. He's actually been the head coach at the cross country in the cross country post for a number of years now. I think you're probably right. It's a question of what Dave wants to do. Beyond that, I don't honestly know. Dan Steele was in a position where he wanted to return to the Midwest from Oregon. Is that model still working? They attract someone from either coast that wants to come back here, or do you get an assistant somewhere that is looking to run a program and sees this as an opportunity? I don't know. Those would be two logical places to start, I would think.
How about the other assistants that are currently on staff?
Well, that's an interesting question. Shelley Sayers, Dan O'Mara are two of them. Angelo Bertoli is another one. I don't really know what their ambitions are. It'd be interesting to see if Shelley Sayers, for instance, if they split the jobs and had her in charge of the women's program, or actually gave her the whole thing. That'd be a question. O'Mara is, I think, more of a specialty in the throws. He's done a very, very good job with their weight people. I don't know, again, what his ambitions are, but it seems like that's sort of where he's been pigeonholed. So, and I don't really know much about Bertoli, what he would want to do. Again, I think the logical candidate out of that group would still be Dave Paulson.
Very good. High school baseball sub-state finals continue here tonight and tomorrow night. Give us a little preview. I know we've got Don Bosco playing tonight. I think Gladbrook, Rhinebeck, Columbus are still in the hunt. Cedar Falls won a big game last night. They'll play tomorrow night. So will Waverly Shellrock. Give us a little preview on. You've been around seeing some of these teams, especially recently. What you've seen and maybe what you see going forward.
Well, I think at the sub-state level we'll have a couple of intriguing ball games. Starting with Don Bosco and Gladbrook Rhinebeck. And Don Bosco, you have a team that was in the state tournament last year, has that tradition of going down there, and you know, they're always good. They're always solid. In Gladbrook Rhinebeck, you have the last hurrah for a group of seniors that's done some extraordinary things. They were part of a state football playoff run to the finals. A couple of these kids played in the state championship basketball team. They've had state soccer success. And now we have guys like Camden Kickbush, Zach Pierce going for one more try at the state tournament. And they've got a pretty good team. I saw them play against Columbus earlier in the year. They were just getting organized, just getting their feet wet, if you will, after the soccer season. So I expect a good ball game there. Columbus and South Winneshiek is about as good as a matchup as you can get at the sub-state level. Teams ranked 4th and 5th. They met earlier this year. South Wind won 14-9 in walk-on, scored 5 runs to do it. They have a couple of great ball players. Columbus has one of the best ball players in the state, and Luke Farley, an Iowa commit. So that matchup looks like to be dead even, and it all depends on the pitching staff. Now, Cedar Falls kept us all up late last night. That's one reason I couldn't remember Sean Johnson's name about 10 minutes ago. And so the Tigers did a remarkable job. They had won it 7-6 in 11 innings. Now they play Kennedy. Bad news from Nick Klein's standpoint is he's got to find a pitcher. He pitched Brady Corson, I think, 3 innings, 3 1/3 last night, and he may be about out of innings, not to mention stamina, so they've got to find a starter. We'll see what happens. Kennedy has been a very, very good team. Cougars will be playing Cedar Falls at home. So there's that. And they'll be rested. They had a bye last night, so all of us restos are bringing midnight oil. They were getting to bed early, and you'd have to believe they're the favorites, but maybe once you get in the field, you never know what happens.
Sean Johnson.
Sean Johnson. Took a while, but
I think I'll also blame our advancing age for not being able to
there is
recall that name. What another interesting thing that's been going on, maybe not so interesting to some people, but I get a kick out of it. The Tour de France is up to stage 17, getting close to the finish. I mean, the other day, Chris Froome, the leader, has a cup of urine tossed at him while he's pedaling up the hill. Yesterday, one of Froome's teammates crashed headfirst into a telephone pole. That's pretty interesting. Any thoughts about the Tour de France? It'd be nice if we had a few more Americans in the hunt, but we don't. So you kind of follow it for what it is. But
this is a sport that seems to always get publicity for the wrong reason. And now we have this. And today, there was a story that came over the wire a little while ago that the Froome's team has now released all this medical data to try to prove that he's not doping. It's just
instead of being innocent until proven guilty,
you're
you're guilty until proven innocent.
Because the French media has sort of not really just suggested, they basically come out and accused him of doping.
Yeah.
And given the history of this sport, I don't like that sort of thing, but you understand why it happens. And again, you just can't seem to get out from under this. The scandal's been there now for years, and Froome has denied he's doping, and people remember how vehemently Lance Armstrong denied doping and how many drug tests he passed. So Froome is in a bad spot. Even though he's leading the race, he'll be winning it. Will he get the full credit for winning it? Probably not. And that's unfortunate, but it's sort of the hand the cyclists have dealt themselves, really.
It is. It's kind of the legacy the sport has built over the last decade or two. Hard to get out from under that.
It really is, and I'm not sure how you do it now. Hopefully you have a run of champions that are drug-free and that people believe in. I think that's the most important thing. They have to believe in.
And I think if you saw similar performances in, say, Major League Baseball, I mean, there would be that same shadow of doubt. Somebody out of the blue, say a Brian Dozier from the Minnesota Twins, hits 45 or 50 home runs. I mean, there is going to be that element of doubt and suspicion that will also follow him around. So
it always rears its head, and I think that's the year to live in. Now it's interesting. Baseball seems to be gradually getting away from that because we have these stars that look to be legitimate. Bryce Harper, to name one. Lawrence McCutcheon, to name another. Andrew McCutcheon from Pittsburgh. A lot of pitchers. It's almost ironic to an extent that since MLB has put in drug testing now, the big concern is not hitting too many home runs, it's not hitting enough. And so we've come to this point where the sport is being dominated by power pitchers, and MLB and the players are searching for answers, and I'm guessing that those answers, or I hope, will include PEDs. All
right. I think anything else on your mind this week?
Not really. It's one thing that we do have that's on the horizon, college football. As we suggested earlier, the Iowa State and the Big 12 is having its media days as we speak. UNI's is coming up shortly. The Big 10, I believe, is next week. So the discussion about college football is already heating up here at the end of July, and it's only going to get hotter as we progress into August.
Yeah, it's there just isn't a vacation time for sports in our world. I mean, there's always plenty going on, and our guys will be out and about this week at the state softball tournaments, some sub-state baseball, the state trap shoot, and as I mentioned earlier, we'll take a look at some of the implications of the cost of attendance decision with UNI and some of the other schools beginning this weekend. So check with us in print or online at www.wcfcourier.com, and we'll see you again next week.